This is the most powerful unit in Korea's history. The members of this unit are all serial killers and death row inmates. Their goal is to assassinate Kim Il-sung, the leader of North Korea. Their training is horrendous and brutal. For example, hand strength training, where they had to split steel plates. Pain training, where a red-hot iron would be burned directly to their body. Breath-holding training, where if anyone dared to come out for air, they'd meet a machine gun on the surface and get shot in the head. Even the ropes were made of barbed wire. They were the toughest guys out there. Their combat power is about 10 times that of the Special Forces. They're known as the 684th Death Squad. This issue is based on true events. Were they able to complete the assassination of the dictator? It's an ending you'll never guess. In the 1960s, the situation between North and South Korea was critical. North Korea sent a special team to assassinate the president of South Korea, but the plan failed. South Korea decided to fight back. They decided to create the 684th Death Squad, so they could assassinate the leader of North Korea. The commanding officer brought in the worst offenders on death row, trying to turn them into top assassins. These 30 or so men came aboard. They got together, but they didn't like each other. And when they don't get along, they start fighting. The ship was in chaos. The commander fired a shot and everyone instantly went quiet. He ordered them to jump into the sea, but they were criminals, so why would they obey his orders? The commander pulled out his machine gun and started shooting. Then he took out a grenade and threw it. They got so scared that they jumped into the sea. Those who were slow to do so perished. In order to prevent them from returning to the boat, they blew up the boat. The prisoners had to swim to Silmado. There were only 31 of them left. Upon hearing that they could serve their country, they put on their uniforms. The 684th Death Squad was formed. They began their training. They were trained on a one-to-one basis. One instructor to one prisoner. Endurance training, 30 laps around the island. If they were too slow, the instructor would use a baton to whack them. Run again. They were much faster this time, but there were still slow runners who got caught in the net. So the stick massaged their muscles. Now they had to vertically climb a rope, but on one side of the rope, an instructor kept interfering. Even if they got hit and fell to the ground, they had to get up and keep climbing. Have you ever seen such brutal training? They had to crawl through barbed wire face up. They had to scuffle their way to the front. For those who were slow, the instructor would stand on the wire, letting them feel the wire on their flesh. Everyone who went through this screamed in pain. Now they had target practice, but they were in pieces. They couldn't even get close to the target, not to mention hitting the red center. The poor hillside was turned into a hornet's nest. They didn't pass the test. The instructor was dragged into it and was beaten with a big stick on the ass. For pain training, a red-hot iron was taken out of a bucket. They were all naked and the iron was put directly on the skin, so that if they were caught in the act of assassination, they wouldn't confess as soon as they were tortured. Most of them couldn't help themselves. They ran into the water in pain. Next group, the commanding officer shouted, "Get ready." The branding iron hadn't been released yet. Dave was in the middle of his act and went straight for it, but he realized he was too early. So Dave ran back in embarrassment. They had to try for a second time. Have you ever seen a troop pick a captain like this? After they put a red-hot iron on his back, Dave, like an arrow flying off the string, ran out in a flash and jumped into the water. There were only 3 who didn't say a word when they were scalded: Chris, Ken, and James. The commander decided to split the 684 into 3 squads, and made the 3 of them team leaders. They didn't agree with each other. We'll see what happens in the boxing match. In the octagon, Chris and Ken were fighting in the dark. Chris was a boxer by training. His stances were more formal and his punches were hard-hitting. On the other hand, Ken was a person who, the more he fought, the more angry he got. He's got a lot of energy, but he was knocked down by Chris's punch. Back to the dormitory, Ken was not satisfied and wanted to fight again, but James knocked him down with one move. It seems that the 3 captains are all tough men. This was the most brutal breath-holding exercise ever. The instructor made them have to hold their breath underwater for 3 minutes. For rookies, this was impossible. K can only manage 42 seconds, but if they couldn't hold their breath, they would die. The instructor was carrying a machine gun on the surface. Once they came out to catch their breath, they would be shot in the head. They were holding hands, trying to hold on. Time's up. Come on up. Their lungs were bursting. Rope bridge training. Team members must cross the bridge in 65 seconds. If they don't, they'll be shot. More than 30 guns were aimed at them. James's team went first. It was a smooth ride. They were done in 42 seconds. Next was Ken's team. One team member was afraid of heights. Halfway up, his legs couldn't stop shaking. He slipped and fell. He became crippled. Ken's team took 65 seconds. They barely made it. Next was Chris's team. It was going well at first, but then there was an accident. One of the team members had a heart attack in the middle of the race. Chris had an idea. He told him to grab the rope and get out of the way. After the others passed, Chris rushed to save him, but it was too late. He couldn't hold on any longer. He fell to the ground and died. The others all realized that this really was the devil's training. If they didn't do it right, they'd die. In the evening, the teams got together and cremated the bodies of their dead teammates. These guys were really good. They climbed the barbed wire fence very smoothly. They were all good at shooting. If their hands were weak, they'd practice splitting steel plates. If their legs were weak, they'd kick sandbags. If they couldn't keep their balance, they'd cross the single rope underwater. Everyone could now basically hold their breath for more than 5 minutes. They even got bored in the water. They began communicating in sign language and playing with each other. They were wearing only pants in winter. They didn't feel cold. They were running towards the top of a snowy mountain with their guns. That was it. The 684th team's combat power had long surpassed the instructor's expectations. They had become an elite team. The 684th was very energetic. Every day, they were ready to assassinate the North Korean president and serve their country. One rainy night, the opportunity had finally arrived. The superiors decided that they would assassinate the North Korean president tonight. The commander called a meeting before the battle. Show North Korea the strength of our soldiers. You will become the greatest heroes of our country. The soldiers were all ready to die in service of their country. Without a word of complaint, even if they died, they were going to finish the mission. The 684th was leaving in their kayaks and the commander saw them off. But something unexpected happened. The commander received a call that asked them to stop the operation immediately. Even though the commander didn't want to, soldiers had to obey orders. The commander took the boat and told them to stop. No one wanted to go back. The commander could only suppress them with fire. The 684th was forced to withdraw to the island. It turns out that relations between North and South Korea had eased. The assassination had been put on hold indefinitely. Every member of the 684th began to relax. They no longer took training seriously, and even started talking back to the instructor. I bet you've never seen a target like this. You don't shoot at the head, you just keep hitting the birds. Dave said that if he stayed here, he'd die. At night, Dave and Nick pretended to have a stomachache. They snuck out and ran to the far side of the camp, where they found the female doctor they knew and stole a car. The commander found out. He brought his team to arrest them. Dave and Nick knew that the commander will not let them go easily. They decided to kill themselves. They were ready to stab each other with their knives. Dave stabbed Nick, but Nick didn't stab him back. Dave was caught on the spot and tied up. If one person made a mistake, the entire 684 team was punished. After watching his teammates suffer, Dave shouted, "Give them a break." Chris stepped forward and hit Dave with a blow. Dave died on the spot. The commander went to find his superior. He asked when the 684 would finally act and carry out their mission. But his superior said that relations between the two countries are becoming more stable. No one else must know about 684th Death Squad's existence. He ordered the commander to execute all members of Unit 684. After 3 years of living together, the commander began treating the members of the squad like his own family. He couldn't bear to execute them. His superior warned the commander, "If they are not executed within a week, you and your men will be buried with them." The commander told his adjutant generals Kim and Song about this. Kim said yes to killing the 684 so he could save his life, but Song disagreed. They had a big fight. All this was overheard by Chris. He didn't realize that Lieutenant Song, who was usually the meanest to them, would be the one who defended them. Lieutenant Kim, who was usually kind, wanted to kill them. Chris told Ken and James. They saw Lieutenant Song leaving, so they knew they'd have to take action tonight. Before leaving, they asked Lieutenant Song to bring back some candy. The men saluted Song. They knew that after he left, things would be different. If they saw each other again, the commander was going to kill the entire team. They were ready to move in half an hour. The words had just been spoken and gunshots began coming from outside. Team 684 was already on the move. The team's combat power had already surpassed the instructors. It was easy for them to kill the instructors. James aimed his gun at his instructor and killed him with a single shot. He held the instructor in his arms and cried out in pain, but he was attacked by Lieutenant Kim. James died just like that. Lieutenant Kim was then surrounded by the 684. He tried to beg for mercy, but they shot him dead. Chris broke into the command center. The commander didn't hide. He was under military orders. He couldn't resist, but he didn't want to kill his own men either. The commander took his gun and killed himself. Chris looked at his dead teammates. How could the government do this to us? Team 684 decided to go to the president of South Korea to find out what was going on. Team 684 hijacked a bus. The radio in the bus was broadcasting the news. Team 684 was described as rebels. The team was furious. They trained day and night for 3 years straight, preparing to lay down their lives to serve their country. Even with 500 snipers out there, they weren't afraid. They went straight to the checkpoint. One of them was shot. The others sang him the national anthem to send him off. More and more soldiers gathered. A force of 3,000 men surrounded the bus. There were many snipers above them. The bus was forced to stop. Chris was ready to take the blame alone. Of course, Ken disagreed.
난 너 혼자 끝까지 개벽다구 같은 똥폼 잡는 건 못 봐.
The team members all took a stand. They were not afraid to die. They would die together. At this moment, the sniper on the roof, ignoring the civilians' lives, fired directly in front of such a merciless weapon. No matter how good they were, resistance was useless. Both sides began shooting at each other. Team 684 suffered heavy casualties. Ken saw his teammates fall one by one. He stood up and fired his machine gun, but was also hit. These patriotic Special Forces soldiers were falsely accused of treason. Lieutenant Song arrived on the scene. He said he could convince them to surrender, but before he could finish his sentence, he was pulled aside. The executives wouldn't listen to him. Lieutenant Song brought candy, but the team wouldn't get any. The team knew their time was coming. They wrote their names in blood. They were rebels, so they would not get tombstones. It was their way of telling the world that they weren't rebels. Chris held Ken's hand tightly. In the next life, we'll be brothers again. They let the civilians out and took out their grenades. Chris was the first to pull the safety off. His teammates followed. 19 grenades fell onto the ground. The team was still trying to protect their teammates, and they fell on the grenades without any hesitation. They all want to keep their teammates alive. 2 seconds later, the bus exploded. The grenade was very powerful. The 684th Death Squad was wiped out. In the aftermath, their actions were described as an act of terror. No one knew their names, and the truth was locked away in a closet forever. What do you think of this ending? Post it in the comments section. That's the end of the movie. This movie is called Silmado. Question: how many seconds can you hold your breath? Post your answer to the comments section. This movie is based on a true story. We recommend watching the original movie. Well, that's it for this issue. Remember to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Bye.